welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Taurus, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of May 2023. I hope you are well and happy birthday to all of you. I'm using the Night Sun Tarot for you today. Just before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there is an extended that you can access at the end. That's the first link in the description box. Second link in the description box is to the 6-month overviews that I did for each of the signs. They run from January to June 2023, and I am actually making preparations to start the July to December 2023 readings too. But we've still got a couple of months left on there, so if you haven't had a chance to check them out and you are interested, you know what to do with that link. The third link is to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on Circle. It's chock full of awesome people. Lots of interesting discussions going on over there, and we started running classes and stuff, and you can get access to all the extended stuff for no extra cost. So if that's something of interest to you, please do feel free to go and check it out. So, Taurus, let's get some cards for you. What's going on with Taurus, please? I have 3 cards. Wow. Okay, well, I asked for 3 cards and I got 3, so I'm probably not going to take them all. We've got the Queen of Cups, the Knight of Cups, and the 7 of Pentacles in reverse. I'll show them to you there. I'm going to put those back in, because that's not the way that I want to do this. 1 card for each, if possible. What about recent energy? Well, we've got 2. We'll go with that. We have the 3 of Swords and the 10 of Wands in your recent past. Current energy for Taurus, please. Ooh, we have the Queen of Wands appearing there. And what is coming towards Taurus for May, please? We have the Page of Wands. So, there's a lot of wand energy here for you, Taurus. Let's flip this around so you can see what I'm looking at. We've got the 5 of Cups at the bottom of the deck, but we've got the 3 of Pentacles sitting beyond that, and there's that Knight of Cups again. I think the retrograde has got quite a lot going on with you this month. I do not feel like any of these, well, obviously this is kind of recent past anyway, I feel like these are things that are popping up indicating new situations that would create any kind of burden or any kind of, emotional difficulty. I feel like it's more a processing of past things, if that makes sense. So let's just, I've just put an absolute rock of frankincense in there, and it's just taking a little while to get started. There we go. Let's get some clarifiers for you and see what's going on here. So tell me about the 3 of Swords and the 10 of Wands. We have the Star, that's Aquarius. Knight of Wands, amazing. Ooh, Wheel of Fortune in the World reversed. Okay. Take those. Tell me about the Queen of Wands, please. We've got the Hanged Man and the King of Wands. This is outstanding. And what about the Page of Wands, please? Thank you. 6 of Swords. And the 2 of Wands. Right, the 3 of Wands is at the bottom of the deck here. And the overwhelming... oh, sorry. Just, if I pull some faces... I had a bit of a snowboarding incident, snowboarding mishap on Monday, and I've had fat knees all week that is now starting to go an interesting shade of purple and black. 10 years doing kickboxing and my knees never looked like that. That's the joys of getting old, right? Anyway, it's a bit sore, so just lift it up onto the stool. The overwhelming sense that I have here for you is that Mercury retrograde is going to be extremely pertinent for you. I mean, obviously, it's occurring in your sign, it's occurring in your season. So one might have expected that there would be some profound realizations that are happening for you this month. It feels like it's the processing of that which has been holding you back. And I know that we talk about these things often, but, I would bring to your attention the fact that the work is never done. We take 2 steps forwards and then we take a step back and have a look and see where we've come from and what we've worked through, and then we carry on. It's 3 of Swords and 10 of Wands. Like I said, it's showing up here in your recent past. So it is the contemplation of those, I think, rather than the new experience of those. We have the pain that is caused by certain truths that are spearing through the heart here. And, the ensuing kind of challenge that comes from trying to find a way to process that. I think one of your most distinctive features, Taurus, is your ability to remain positive, to find the positivity in a situation. Particularly more specifically, actually, if there are other people involved. If you're seeing somebody else in pain, you go above and beyond to try and reassure that person, make them feel better about themselves in some sort of way. What you've been learning to do over the last few years is extend that same quality towards yourself. Excuse me. And it's been difficult because you fought with the inner critic and you've had these, this difficulty often in being able to distinguish between your intuition and that horrible nagging voice that tells you that you aren't enough and you haven't worked hard enough and you're not thoughtful enough and all this sort of stuff. But in the recent past, and by recent past I mean it could be as early as this morning, or it could be 6 weeks back hence from here, we've had you contemplating what has pained you in a very specific way, as we would expect from Taurus, right? It's really quite practical in terms of the ways in which you have almost made things being difficult for you an art, right? That was a bit of a mangled sentence, but I always feel like that with this Ten of Wands. Sometimes we look at the Ten of Wands in different depictions and we say, well, you've made it hard for yourself somewhere. And whether it's through a lack of self-belief or whether it's this constant battle that you have inside with your own self-worth. One could say quite straightforwardly, and I believe we have that relationship now, Taurus, that if you didn't have to battle with that inner critic quite so much, if you could just relax into and allow yourself to, but have really good boundaries and say no and mean no, and and spot the red flags, and then not find a way to justify them in your dealings with other people, and actually just say no, this is too much, that things might have gone easier for you, right? There's a sense here of turning that into somewhat of an art, and I do think that that's what you've done, Taurus. Right? Obviously, the last 3 years have been unpicking that, but there's something kind of pinnacle about the conclusions that you are beginning to come to about the way that other people have operated around you. Now, you could give in to sadness on that one, and maybe in the past you would have done. But it seems to be altogether a more practical consideration now. It's almost like you've got the ability to be able to take the emotion and the pain and put it to one side while you are considering what the situation has been. And for some of you, that has been a really difficult procedure of accepting that people that you thought were awesome actually probably weren't. And so we're unpicking how it was that you got there. That's what it feels like to me. You're unpicking how it is that you got to a place where you saw a person and all you saw was divine light, right? As Jung would say, you saw the gold in this person. And realizing that you've been projecting some of that, at least some of that, out onto a person. And, the esteem in which you have held certain people, it has a direct correlation. It's inversely proportional to the lack of esteem that you've held yourself in, right? And as that balance is starting to come level like this now, it is challenging that you have to say, yeah, some people are just bastards, right? And that's it, right? They may have some redeeming features, but in this situation, none of those actually apply. And I, as a Taurus, and I'm not actually a Taurus, being you at this point, I, as a Taurus, am going to accept that push up my self-esteem from the bottom here and actually accept people as they are. This Five of Cups relates very closely to this, I feel, because it feels to me like you're in the latter stages of a grieving process here. You know, there's the 7 stages of grief, right? There's denial and anger and all these kind of things, right? And now we're kind of at a point where it's like, well, here's just the truth. And I now am at a point where I can accept the truth. It doesn't mean that it's comfortable by any stretch of the imagination, but it does mean that what I can do with this now is start focusing on myself, focusing on my plans, my goals, tuning down the empathy just a little bit, because I think it's been kind of it's definitely been turned up to 11 with you for the longest time, Taurus, and start paying a bit more attention to you and just you, I would say. Because we've got these cards down here, right? We've got the Star, we've got the Knight of Wands, we've got the Wheel of Fortune, and we've got the World in reverse. And I think the World in reverse and the Wheel of Fortune sit very close. Well, obviously they sit very closely together, but I mean, they're not just touching in a physical sense, they're touching in an energetic sense too. Because whenever the Wheel of Fortune shows up, it tells us that there is something here that is really important for us to learn, right? And as a result of what it is that we choose to learn about this, what we allow ourselves to learn about a situation, when we start seeing it for what it is rather than what we think it is that things begin to change outside of us. Our perspective changes, we change, and the way that we view situations changes too. And you seem to be very focused on how it is that you have not managed to close out certain cycles. I mean, I think there might be a recognition of where cycles have been in somewhat of a state of repetition for you. And, you know, we've been working this out over the last few years. But where it has been, you know, a situation would go so far and then it falls apart and then you kind of pick yourself up and you carry on again. But what you've missed each time is the deeper lesson of your self-esteem, of your confidence, of yourself, actually. And that is all now coming very neatly together. I wonder if the retrograde energy has got something to do with this. And the retrograde's nothing to be afraid of at all. It is a point where, you know, 3 or 4 times a year we're asked to stop and reflect and redo, you know. The emphasis is on the word re, on the prefix re, on every word that you could use to talk about it, because what we're doing is finding a way to close situations out properly that have not been closed before. So it's not a good time for initiating things that you haven't done before, but it's certainly a very good time for going back to things that you have already done and checking that you have learned everything that you were supposed to learn about this. Now, the presence of the Knight of Wands is really interesting, because I think if you were to pick an archetype from the court hierarchy that does express healthy self-interest, for me it would be the Knight of Wands. Now, obviously, every card has its shadow aspect, and there are the Knight of Wands is no different. So the Knight of Wands could also represent, you know, almost quite a bit of selfishness, you know, maybe hedonism, recklessness, thoughtlessness, all of the things that actually traditionally you, Taurus, have associated with the idea of taking care of yourself, right? Putting yourself first over other people. It's like, well, immediately you would dismiss it as thoughtless, reckless, selfish, all of these things that you don't want to be. But I feel like there's something that you're learning here that is very important. We all do have things that we need to learn from other signs, you know. Even those signs that we feel wholesale we don't want anything to do with, right? The fact that they keep coming up is usually an indication that there's something important for us to learn. And the Knight of Wands is the epitome of self-interest and fun and adventure and all of the cool things that we can have when we're not busy making being burdened into an art. Now, the Star card was the very first one that was coming out here. And it talks about vulnerability and it talks about healing. And for me, it talks very specifically about connection. And I think that the way that you connect with people is getting a big overhaul because we're not doing things the way that we did before. But more than anything else, at this point, it seems to be speaking to a return to hope. I hope that things can be fun. I hope that adventure can be had, whilst also realising that there are a lot of loose ends that need tying up at the same time. The thing is, this is all coming to such a peak here. It makes a lot of sense for what's coming next, but it feels like almost like a grand culmination of the life lessons that you've absorbed so far. Now, I'm particularly thinking over the last 3 years. But it might well have been escalating in this last year. This week, I remember talking to you. Oh gosh, it might have been back in 2020. It might have been that long ago. How there were a couple of signs who seemed to be born with this innate knowledge that they were strong. And I'm thinking specifically Leo and Taurus here, right? And that somewhere along the line, what we understood about our place in the world was that in order for us to be on the right path, it must be hard, there must be struggle. This strength has been put into us for a reason. And we just try and knock over walls with it. We try and brute force our way to acceptance by other people, to be a part of something. I don't mean you literally steamroller people, but we steamroller our better senses of discernment in order to be accepted by people. And I think this is all coming to an end, certainly for you. But one of the lessons that seems necessary for Taurus and Leo specifically to understand is that it doesn't always have to be hard. And if it is uniformly and consistently hard, maybe we're going about things the wrong way. Maybe there is more of a value in submission and acceptance than trying to utilize all of this strength that we know that we have, right? Sometimes it's about stepping back and allowing ourselves to really see what is happening, who people are. And it's very difficult when you get stricken by this internal voice that tells you that you need to be accepted by these people. And if you're not accepted by these people, whether it is your family or whether it's your friendship group or work colleagues or whatever, then there's clearly something wrong with you and you need to put in more effort. It makes for an exhausting way of trying to live. And I think you've been so busy with the self-work for the last 3 years. I remember somebody commenting on one of the videos saying that they thought Taurus was addicted to self-work. And I can sort of see where they're coming from, but I don't think it's an addiction with Taurus. It's an authenticity. But it's always just been fired off in slightly the wrong direction because it's always been outward facing. We certainly be looking to other people for our validation. We're looking to other people to tell us that we're doing the right thing. We make ourselves indispensable to people because that's our version of being of service, and that's what we think the world needs from us, because it's actually what we're told that the world needs from us, usually by our primary caregivers, whoever they end up being. What you're not taught is to think about yourself. What you're not taught is to kind of extricate yourself from whatever situation that you're in. Look around and recognize the fact that you are, a spirit living a human existence, literally the universe experiencing itself, and then asking that feeling or your higher self or whatever, what do you need from me? What do I need to learn here? Your mind is on the World card, I think, and your mind is on the process of uprighting that card. And it feels like lots and lots of things are dovetailing together at the same time. They're just meeting in this perfect marriage in the middle. And it's the marriage of emotional stability and mental acuity and strength, power. You know, all of these things that are represented by the World card. It's like the pennies are all dropping at the same time, Taurus. And you're like, I get it. I get it. And more specifically, I get how I have held myself back because of these incorrect assumptions that I have held about my place in the world. That's how it feels to me. Now, in your current energy, we have got the Queen of Wands with the Hanged Man and the King of Wands. So already we have a balance there of wand energy. And just to explain, you know, I feel that the Wands cards represent things like your vital force, right? The very life energy that runs through you. But also your experience, what it is that you are living in the day-to-day. It is also your ability to be able to affect any kind of change at all, right? It's action. It's always about action. And particularly when the King of Wands is in the mix. So you've got an extraordinary amount of Wands cards on here, which is interesting. There's a lot of fire. But it feels like the fire is being... It's being tempered by this Hanged Man. It's not action for action's sake. It's not, right, I have to go do all the things and be busy, busy, busy all the time. You know, the King and the Queen together show us that there is a balanced approach of the fire energy anyway. We have both the active expression of that energy here with the King of Wands. There is the doing. But we have the Queen of Wands before it. And for me, she speaks of the preceding... what's the word that I'm looking for? It's almost like the necessary preconditions for you to do something and do it well. In so much as she represents self-esteem, and she represents, you know, the inner subjective awareness of movement, right? I'm using movement in a kind of metaphorical sense. I'm reminded of I think it was Bruce Lee. It's a quote by Bruce Lee, who was a Sagittarius, so fire sign and very, you know, on point. He said he did not fear the man who knew 10,000 kicks. He feared the man who knew one kick and had practiced it 10,000 times. Right? The practicing it is the Queen of Wands to me. Right? It is the confidence, you know, when you have to move. That action just comes from nowhere. It bypasses the brain and the action is just there. It's just reflexive because you have trained it, right? So there is a corresponding amount of confidence in that, you know, a knowledge without even knowing that you know the thing now. It's just kind of been completely subsumed into your consciousness, your subconscious rather. And knowing that you are able to do a thing. And then the King of Wands comes along and here is the man who is doing that one kick. Bear with me, this is making sense, right? If this is not making sense just yet. For me, the Queens are always about the things that have to happen inside before you can externally express them. So, you know, being able to, say in the case of the Queen of Cups and the King of Cups, being able to actually accept love and help and charity and forgiveness and all of those kind of things before you are able then to turn around and be able to give those things to other people, right? It has to hit the heart of you first, and you have to truly understand it from that perspective before you can start expressing it out. Right? Think about how, you know, the first person that you fall in love with, right, is absolutely all-consuming. And we think what we have there is love. We're absolutely convinced of it. And you're going to die for this person. You're going to be together forever. And you're like, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years old, something like that, right? And then eventually it all falls down. And you're fucking bereft, like absolutely heartbroken. And then you meet the next person. And so on and so forth. And as you grow and as you age and as you experience lots and lots of different relationships, you realise that very first one that you had wasn't really love, right? It might have been puppy love, it might have been infatuation, it might have been like borderline obsession, because that's what teenagers are like, right? But what it wasn't was love. And as you begin to understand what love actually is, then you are far more able to give that out, instead of something that is approaching, codependence, pretty much. So it is with the King and Queen of Wands, right? There is that innate knowledge of the way that you move, the way that you experience life, an openness and a willingness to experience things differently, I think, but then a corresponding amount of will to be able to bring this about. The Hanged Man says that it's knowing when to fight and when to submit. It's a very wise position there. It's a change of perspective. And it could well be that there's a change of perspective in the way that you are now wanting to live your life. Right? You might have actually, I can't believe how on point that is actually. You might have made some sort of lifestyle change that has been really important to you, like giving up smoking or something like that, right? Something that benefits you from a health perspective, from a life perspective. Like I said, recognizing the things that have been holding you back and actually doing something about them, feeling confident enough to do something about them. We've got the Two of Cups, so relationships are getting this same treatment too, and I do feel like that relates to the past stuff over here, because your main card is the Queen of Cups. She's not at all, she's the Queen of Wands, sorry, just zoned out for a second there. She's the Queen of Wands, so it's about the internal subjective experience that's going on. It's about the I choose that rather than this, and these are the things that I am going to do to reflect that. Now that Two of Cups there will have you absolutely changing the way that relationships affect you. Like I said, it's like all of the pieces falling into the puzzle at the same time. So you may be in a relationship, you may not be in a relationship. I actually feel like this is affecting all of the relationships around you, with the closest people you know and the people that you know less well. There's something much more Empress-like about the way that you are showing up to all of your relationships. Now, some aspect of that will be a true understanding of your power and where it lies, as opposed to where you thought it lay. It's also a refusal to put people on some sort of plinth, on some sort of pedestal, and think that they're the best thing ever. It's like realizing, again, with this, and this balance keeps coming up. I keep want to move my hands like this. Like, people are just people. They're as flawed as you are, and they're as perfect as you are, and they need to be accepted on that level. But that also relates to you. It's also applicable to you. And so a willingness to accept your flaws and know that that actually takes nothing away from you. If anything, it just gives you something to work with, and that's a welcome thing, right? But this divine feminine energy of the Empress, which is, Taurus for me, less solely. I can't get the Libra thing, really. It's Taurus for me. Means that you're ready to start the act of creation. And it could be a project, it could be something that you're working on, but I don't think it's anything nearly as flat as that. I think this is a spiritual perspective here. It's like, trying to explain what I'm being shown. It's like moving from a 2D representation of a map to a 3D one. I was messing about on Google Earth the other day and it was really cool, even though I hate Google because they're evil, right? And the depth that you can get when you stop looking at something overhead like that, and then you can actually tilt like this, so you can see how big mountains are, and you can see how low the valleys are and stuff. It's like it's opened up this whole new vista for you. And when you're looking at people, you're not looking at a 2D representation of what you think they are. Now you're starting to perceive, just as in yourself, the good things and the bad things, and the high points and the low points and all this kind of thing, and how it doesn't really matter. You feel so confident and so powerful to me at the moment, Taurus, that whatever it is that you're planning to do, whatever loose ends that it seems that you're tying up here, and they're all coming together at once. For the first time in probably ever, you're starting to get a sense of how powerful you are, and you're wearing it lightly. Power doesn't mean burden. Power doesn't mean I have to do all the things for all the people all the time. Power is simply, I exist, I create, and I can do all of these things. I can. Like, I can is huge here. What is King of Wands? Ten of Wands. I can work hard if I need to. But I also have the ability to discern what is what. To discern whether or not the situation actually requires it. I mean, the Page of Swords is at the bottom of the deck here, and it's like a light going on. If you need to work hard, you can. But it's not necessary for you to prove yourself through hard work continuously all the time. You're not chasing that sense of, well, I couldn't possibly have done any more than I have done, so I guess on some level I must have done okay. It's like, no, like the Empress. Look at the smile on her face there, as she's watching things blow around. There's a peace about you, Taurus. It's like you're finally relaxing into who you are. And the thing that you're creating here, it's kind of abstract and it's kind of ephemeral, but it will have some sort of material manifestation. Because you're a builder, because you're a creator, because this is what you do. So even the smallest changes in you that are happening at the moment are going to have some sort of real world result, and it could be by way of things that you would never have connected in your life. But we're very much in the realm of nuance here. because you've cleaned up so much of the way that you deal with people. I don't think you've any idea the amount of space that you're actually creating around you. And in the space that you cleared around you, you know, you've got a corresponding amount of space to create in. So whether it is tackling something that has affected your health, right? Maybe it's even feeling yourself starting to get to a point of health and wellness that you haven't been at for a while, as that could be for some of you. It's like you're preparing the ground for everything. And what we've got coming towards you in May is the Page of Wands. Now, the Page of Wands for me is an initiatory card of taking a step on a journey, right? Or even the preparation for a journey that you know is coming up. I just get a kind of like little fizz of excitement when I see the Page of Wands. But what I love about the way that the cards have come out here is that there has been that first step of putting yourself first, right? Just kind of careered into the middle of the reading, and it's like, right, no, I deserve to have fun. I deserve to have joy in my life. I deserve to be spontaneous if I so please. I mean, obviously, you're never going to be Sagittarius level spontaneous, but there are things that you can draw in from that energy, and it can certainly like loosen your grip on what has been static around you. And then we move to this point of, you know, the absolute peak of one's energy, which is the balance of both the King and the Queen of Wands. So you've got the active aspect of it and the internal passive aspect of it married together, taking you to something new. I know that the cards are jumping around a little bit, but I feel like the wisdom and experience that you're bringing to the newness here. And I like the fact that it's not the Ace of Wands, because do you remember I said at the beginning about Mercury retrograde, like it's not a good time to initiate something. It is a good time to pick up things that you have already started and start exploring those more. Excuse me. If this was the Ace of Wands, I'd be a bit like, oh, Taurus, be careful. What are you doing? It's a Mercury retrograde and all that kind of thing. Because the wands, the Ace rather of Wands, would represent a whole new way of being that you have not experienced before, right? And it'd be a little bit too fresh when the energy is wanting you to tidy up what has already been before. But this is taking something that you already have, perhaps you have already explored, and coming back to it in some sorts of way. Now, the Six of Swords is here. So we've got a moving away from something, and that very much ties in with what I'm seeing going on over here, right? There's a moving away from, possibly intellectually, certainly mentally, a situation that has been problematic for you. And moving towards the contemplation of something else. Like I said, I don't think it's a new thing. I think you're going back to something that you've already been thinking about. So we've got the Three of Wands here. We've got a direction of travel. We've got, for me, it's a low-level card of manifestation, actually. So it's about what you decide in the Two, which is a very internal card, at a crossroads. Which way am I going to go? And the Three is when you start to make things happen. 3 for me is a very external number. It's very expressive. The whole point of 3, right? It's about expression. And in order to manifest things for yourself, you have to first visualize it internally, and then you have to start taking the steps externally to bring that towards you. If you wanted to meet someone, for example, let's say, you know, I've decided I've been single for quite long enough, so now I want to meet someone. There's the visualization of meeting someone and it being a nice thing, right? But if you sit in your pajamas eating pizza and watching Netflix in your house and you never leave, the chances are, playing the odds, you're less likely to meet someone than if you were to, I don't know, put on your nice jeans and go and take a class in something. You know? there's two aspects to manifestation, whatever it is. And like I said, this Page of Wands is something that you've already had in mind, right? So it could be a creative project. It could be the possibility of travel. It could be all sorts of things. Something that you've perhaps put on the back burner, put on the side, which now you have created the space to be able to bring back in, right? There's an emotional and mental readiness for this in a way that it wasn't when you pushed it to one side. It does require leaving something behind, but I feel like what you're leaving behind is actually the agitation that has been associated with this. It's kind of like, oh, that's a thing that I would like to do, but I couldn't possibly do it because of, X, Y, Z, I've got too many things to do. So you've just kind of pushed it to one side. But now we're back in the contemplation phase. Actually, what would that be like? What could I do? Tell me about the Six of Swords. Yeah, we've got the Four of Cups. And we've got the Three of Wands. Now, we've got the Page of Cups at the bottom of here. And I feel like that's absolutely adding some credibility to the fact that it feels like this is a revisitation, right? And you are coming back to this with a much healthier attitude about whether you're even allowed to do something like this, right? Allowed. It's almost like you're refusing to allow yourself to put yourself on the shelf with things, Taurus. I think that's the best way that I can put it. This Four of Cups is, can be a card of boredom and apathy and rejection, rejecting sometimes. It's a fearful card. It talks about the way that we often we will separate ourselves from those things that are being offered to us as gifts because we don't feel like we deserve it, or we're afraid of rejection, or we're afraid of putting ourselves out there in some way. If we open up to something, then the possibility of rejection is ever present. It's really interesting. I did a personal reading with a Taurus months ago now. And she was telling me about business that she was setting up. And she was really afflicted with the inner critic, with the self-doubt and all that kind of thing. And she was like, well, why me? Why do I think that I can do anything like that? She said, and I stopped it in its tracks and I said, why not me? And I was like, I was fucking pom-poms. It was an excellent moment to see it. And that's what that's where my mind's going when I'm looking at that. Why not me? Why not me? Like, have I put myself on the shelf in terms of what I want to get out of the rest of my life, however long that is going to be? And how do I get myself the fuck down from the shelf? Well, this is what's going on here. And for the Two of Wands to the Three of Wands, not once but twice. For some of you, it is travel, almost certainly. For others of you, it is... It's bridging that gap between the things that you've idly contemplated that you would like for the future and the act of bringing them towards yourself. And I don't think you shelved them because of a fear of the amount of work that's involved, because that would never be a Taurus thing to do. You might have shelved it because you didn't have time, because you were too busy, sorting out other people. That I could see entirely. But you might have shelved it because in order to achieve whatever it was, you would need to center yourself, and you weren't comfortable with that either. There's something really big is shifting here for you, Taurus, this month. And I think it's a serious sit with where you go from here. Like I said, travel is really strongly highlighted, but it could be an overhaul of your physical existence. your physicality almost. You know, maybe you're like, actually, do you know what? I need to lose some weight. I'm going to start going to the gym. Maybe I want to learn a new skill, right? I want to learn some sort of martial art, or I want to learn dance, or I want to learn something. There's physical expression here all over this reading, actually. But for some of you, it might be starting something that you've always thought that you would like to do. You're not prepared. You're not prepared to show off your hopes and dreams and your dear wishes anymore. So there's a lot of action on here. There's a lot of activity on here. But I think it's taking yourself off the shelf and going and picking up that thing that you wanted. And saying, how do I now incorporate this into my daily life? How do I make this something that I do? How do I ready myself for an adventure? I hope this is all making sense, Taurus, but like this sense of all of the puzzle pieces just almost dropping from heaven and just showing you the picture is really strong. And also kind of dusting yourself off and being like, why not me? Why not Taurus? There's no reason. Literally no reason. There never was a reason. But before, the inner critic found one. Now it's gone. And I can sort of feel you saying, like, you know, no excuses now. Let's just do this. Let's just get this done. I like it. Right, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to go over to Vimeo. We're going to dig into May specifically a little bit deeper. So if you would like to join me over there, you know what to do. You're very welcome to. Oh, fucking hell. If not, no shade. No problem at all. I'll see you next month. But this looks really good. Really good, Taurus. Alright. Know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.